Welcome to Fulcrum Intel Digest, the podcast.
Today, we are taking on a pretty extraordinary piece of propaganda.
Yeah.
A source that is, well, as disturbing as it is strategically revealing. It's the 18-minute video released by the Islamic State Central Africa Province, or ISCAP. Came out September 26, 2025.
It's titled Jihad and Dawah. And if you look at the source material, what's really striking right away is this huge contrast. On the one hand, it's got incredibly high production value. I mean, it genuinely looks like a sophisticated historical documentary.
Right.
But then you see the content, brutal, extreme violence, and that juxtaposition, that mix of media polish with overt terrorism, that's really the core of its message, I think.
That contrast is absolutely key to its effectiveness, and it's why we need to unpack this.
Definitely.
Our mission today is to dissect this video because it basically lays out ISCAP's entire strategic playbook. It's not just for recruitment, it's about legitimizing violence.
We cover more topics like this every Monday and Friday. So if you'd like to stay up to date, click the subscribe button and give this video a like. Now let's jump in.
So we need to focus on, let's say, three main things. First, the historical and ideological framework they use to justify what they're doing now. Second, it's very clear focus on specific targets, especially the DRC and Uganda.
Right, the local angle.
And third, the mechanism behind its pretty extensive multi-region recruitment strategy.
Okay.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're starting with the foundations, and ISCAP goes way back in history to build its narrative here.
Yeah, they really do.
The video opens not with, say, a recent battle in the Congolese jungle, which you might expect.
Right.
But with scenes depicting the Crusades, it sets this incredibly sweeping, historical, documentary tone right from the very start.
Precisely. What they're doing is immediately framing the current conflict as just a continuation of these ancient religious wars. The narrator emphasizes that the historical Crusades aim to, destroy Islam and subjugate Muslims. And then they explicitly connect that historical enemy to the modern West.
How explicit?
Well, images of George W. Bush, American soldiers, they flash across the screen. It makes that link undeniable for the viewer they're targeting.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to give their current conflict thousands of years of legitimacy.
And they don't just stop at these historical analogies, right? They name a current specific target coalition.
Yes, the Combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve, or CJTFOI.
That's the international coalition set up to destroy the Islamic State.
Exactly. And the video specifically frames that coalition as a modern Crusader campaign against Islam.
Wow.
But what's fascinating here is that the campaign, according to the video, goes beyond just military forces.
Okay.
They pivot pretty seamlessly to what they call soft deceptive campaigns. And this is where they start targeting international missionary and humanitarian institutions.
Soft deceptive campaigns, so aid groups.
Yeah, exactly. They use really powerful visuals here. You see the emblems of the Red Cross and the UN while the narrator discusses these groups.
It's highly cynical, obviously, but from a propaganda standpoint, strategically smart. The rhetoric is essentially that these organizations are operating under the guise of relief and humanitarian aid, but are secretly working against Islam. And considering these groups often operate in areas of, profound hardship, the very areas where ISCAP is actively recruiting, that framing is designed for maximum strategic appeal, isn't it?
Absolutely. They turn international aid itself into an act of ideological aggression. It creates this deep sense of mistrust.
Not just towards soldiers, but anyone international.
Right, towards any form of international intervention or assistance. And this feeds their narrative of self-reliance, rejection of Western support, making their message resonate maybe deeper with vulnerable populations.
Okay, so ISCAP builds this global historical framework. The modern Crusaders fighting Islam. But like you said, they can't just fight ghosts from the past. How do they take that huge global narrative and translate it into a local actionable reason for, say, Congolese and Ugandans to pick up a weapon today?
Right. Good question. They immediately shift to colonial history. That's the bridge. They show imagery depicting Belgian and French military activity, specifically in both the DRC and the Republic of Congo. It's a direct reminder to the viewer of that past domination and oppression.
And they detail specific historical abuses, right, to fuel modern resentment.
Yes. They cite the torture and abuse of Muslim slaves by colonial authorities. And crucially, they mention the subjection of Muslim children to secular education.
Secular education.
Exactly. That point runs directly counter to ISCAP's core ideology. So by citing these historical grievances, torture, forced labor, cultural or religious erasure through education, they're tying the historical pain of colonialism directly to their current ideological war.
Against Western influence and presumably local governments, they accuse of being Western puppets.
Precisely, that's the link.
And this is where we get the really local connection that we see an unidentified ISCAP member actually in the DRC jungles, speaking about the importance of resisting Crusaders in Tanzania, Uganda, and Congo. And he claims these resistance fighters pledged allegiance to IS way back in the Islamic year 1435.
Which translates to about 2013, 2014.
Right. So that shows longevity, a pre-existing commitment to the whole IS project.
And this is the critical ideological pivot, really. It deserves a closer look. The video then shows footage of past ISCAP attacks against Christians.
Okay.
But it frames them as Christians paying the price for their aggression against Muslims. Now, you have to remember, the victims shown here are local Congolese Christians.
Not the European Crusaders from history or the colonial administrators.
Exactly. Not the people who caused the initial colonial atrocities. They just
Wait, hang on. So they are actively translating, what, 1,000-year-old European history and maybe 100-year-old colonial abuses into a justification for executing their immediate neighbors. How do they possibly make that leap credible for recruits who live locally who probably know these victims?
Well, it's a calculated rhetorical maneuver. It's quite sophisticated, actually.
Okay.
They're effectively telling the viewer, look, you are suffering. And the people ultimately responsible for your suffering are aligned with the historical aggressor, the Crusader West.
So all Christians become proxies.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Therefore, all Christians in this region, just by virtue of sharing a religion with the historical enemy, are legitimate targets. They're using this lens of historical justice, or maybe retribution, to justify violence against local citizens.
Wow.
It's a strategy we've also seen used pretty effectively in propaganda from the IS branch in Mozambique, actually.
Interesting parallel. And beyond these direct attacks, they boast about other tactics too, don't they? Like cutting off trade routes?
Yes, cutting off trade routes, exhausting local governments. They even include footage of French President Macron's visit in March 2023 with DRC President Félix Tshisekedi.
I remember that visit. It was quite controversial, faced a lot of anti-French sentiment on the ground.
Exactly. And they cleverly leverage that existing sentiment to further discredit the Congolese government in the eyes of their audience. It shows real narrative sophistication.
They're not just fighting, they're integrating their propaganda seamlessly into real-world political events that already trigger local resentment. Okay, let's turn now to Uganda. The source material really stresses that Uganda is often overlooked as a major theater of operations for ISCAP.
It absolutely is.
But this video makes it abundantly clear that Uganda is a priority for them.
Yeah, Uganda's importance should absolutely not be overlooked. The narrator in the video actually boasts about a decade of activity there.
The decade.
Yes, killing and displacing Christians, burning down churches, army barracks. They are positioning themselves as a persistent, entrenched, long-term threat inside Uganda, not just some flash in the pan.
And the threats are explicit, targeted. The main speaker in the video directly addresses Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni,
whom they call a tyrant, yes.
Right, calls him a tyrant, and states that the 2021 suicide bombings near the Kampala parliament were, and this is a quote, only a small part of what ISCAP plans for the future. Openly threatening a major African capital city like Kampala, especially after they've already demonstrated the ability to strike there. That's highly concerning.
It absolutely is. And this is where they use that really powerful ancient historical analogy we talked about.
Right.
The speaker compares their conflict to Moses' victory over the Egyptian pharaoh, Ramses II. Now, why is that analogy so critical here?
Well, Moses versus the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's a foundational story, isn't it? It's about the enslaved rising up against an established, powerful, and oppressive ruler.
Exactly. So by casting President Museveni in the role of the pharaoh, the powerful, tyrannical ruler trying to stop the chosen people, they attempt to project overwhelming power and, crucially, inevitable victory over adversity.
It taps into a universally understood narrative of the oppressed being freed.
Right. It's designed to inspire recruits who might feel politically or economically oppressed, framing ISCAP not as, a terrorist group, but as a righteous revolutionary force.
It's important to remember, though, behind this sophisticated narrative layering, our sources describe this segment as especially graphic. It shows the execution of 4 victims.
Yes, that's correct.
What does that balance? The high-end production, the deep historical analogy, and then this brutal reality. Tell us about who their primary audience is, or audiences maybe.
I think it tells us they have multiple audiences. The high production value and the historical context, that's likely aimed at potential foreign funders, perhaps recruits who value ideological depth,
Okay.
While the graphic executions and the explicit threats, those are aimed squarely at intimidating local populations and demoralizing the targeted government forces. It's a message of both ideological legitimacy and overwhelming operational ruthlessness.
A dual message. Before moving on, we have to address the striking use of language. The video features a French language hadith.
Yes.
For listeners who might not be experts, what exactly is a hadith first? And why is tailoring one in French such a smart strategic move for this specific region?
Sure. So a hadith is essentially a record of the sayings, actions, or silent approval attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. It's a major source of religious law and moral guidance in Islam, truly foundational. Now, by using a hadith tailored in French, which is, of course, the colonial language of the DRC and borders several other Francophone countries, they demonstrate real linguistic awareness.
It widens their reach.
Hugely. It allows them to appeal directly and, importantly, authentically to Francophone Muslims in the region, dramatically expanding their ideological reach beyond, say, just Swahili or Arabic speakers.
And is played over images of killed soldiers and burning vehicles.
Yes, making that religious justification immediately visceral for the viewer. It's a very sophisticated, multilingual approach.
It absolutely is. And to further cement their credibility, the video then pivots, doesn't it, to what amounts to a kind of highlight reel of recent operational successes, proof of capability.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. They feature a range of attacks across the region they call their wilaya.
Right, and maybe we should clarify wilaya for our listeners.
Good point. Wilaya literally means province or an administrative district within the Islamic State structure. So when they show these successes, they're trying to demonstrate that ISCAP isn't just some rogue group. It's a fully functioning, successful province of the global caliphate.
Okay, so let's run through some of those key successes they highlight in the video.
Sure. They feature an attack on an army position in Luna, Ituri province. That one is narrated by a martyr, Sheikh Abu Hudhaifa al-Ansari.
Using a martyr's voice. And that's a classic recruitment tactic, right?
Oh, absolutely. It frames death in battle as an honor, something that brings eternal reward. Very powerful. They also show a clash near Mombasa. And importantly, they boast about taking control of the strategic road to Kasindi.
Kasindi. That's on the RN4 road, leading to the Ugandan border.
That's the one.
Why is controlling that specific road, the RN4 to Uganda, such a huge strategic win for them? Is it just about moving supplies, or is it demonstrating something bigger?
It's definitely about demonstrating regional reach, but also economic control. The RN4 is a vital trade artery in that region. Controlling it allows them to disrupt commerce, maybe levy illegal taxes, and it shows that the central government can't guarantee the free movement of goods or people. That undermines the state significantly.
And they also boast of seizing livestock as spoils during this operation.
They do.
That sounds like maybe a minor detail, but what does that strategically signify? Is it just about food?
Well, seizing livestock isn't just about feeding fighters, though that's part of it. It's a direct message to the local population, which is often agricultural.
Ah, I see.
It communicates that ISCAP controls the vital resources necessary for survival, directly undermining the state's ability to protect basic livelihoods. It's a form of economic warfare that simultaneously demoralizes civilians and provisions their own forces.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
They also featured attacks on a local self-defense group, a militia, as they call it in Lemba, and a daylight assault on a Congolese army barracks in North Kivu, even showcasing seized equipment.
Yeah, that whole sequence is designed to show the viewer that ISCAP has both the tactical capability and the territorial depth to operate successfully across varied terrain and against different types of enemies, militias, regular army, etc.
Which leads us directly into the massive recruitment push, the Dawah part of the video's title.
Exactly. They issue this global call, but they specifically direct the Hijra message, that's emigration to Muslims across Eastern, Southern, and Central Africa.
Naming specific countries.
Yes, they explicitly name Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda. They urge them to go forth to the land of Islam in the Congo.
The speaker urges them to answer the call of the caliph. But the appeal seems to be about more than just fighting, right? It sounds like they're selling a community.
Absolutely. That's crucial. They assure potential recruits that they will find brotherhood and support when they arrive, and they use these really important religious terms, muhajirin and ansar.
Muhajirin and ansar.
Yeah.
What do those mean, and why are they significant here?
So, muhajirin means immigrants. It specifically references the original followers of the Prophet Muhammad who migrated from Mecca to Medina for the cause. Ansar means supporters, referencing the community in Medina that welcomed and supported those immigrants.
So using those terms is a profound promise.
It is. They are directly addressing the potential fear or apprehension someone might have about making that long, dangerous journey. They're promising immediate community and structure. You won't be alone. You will be welcomed as a vital part of this historic movement.
A powerful draw.
Yeah.
But what if Muslims cannot make that journey? Is there a backup plan?
Yes, there is. They are given a secondary directive: attack Christians and Jews wherever they are.
Right. That highlights the decentralized threat of IS-inspired attacks, doesn't it? Urging isolated sympathizers to conduct maybe simpler acts of violence, even in countries where ISCAP doesn't have an official walaya.
Exactly. It extends the threat globally.
We also see the video detail Dawah, or preaching activities. That seems fascinating because it contrasts so heavily with the violence shown elsewhere.
Yes, Dawah just means preaching, or call. The video shows ISCAP members actively teaching Christians about Islam in rural areas. They claim dozens of conversions.
Dozens?
That's their claim. And they show groups, including children, pledging allegiance to IS. This is clear evidence that ISCAP values and actively engages in both in-person proselytization and online recruitment. It's a multi-front ideological campaign.
Right, hitting both the physical and digital spaces. And alongside that, we get the more classic training footage we often see.
Shooting practice, reading the Quran, and the final pledge of allegiance to the current IS Caliph, Abu Hafs al-Hashimi al-Qurashi. It's designed to show a complete package: ideological commitment, legitimacy through allegiance, and military capability.
Okay, so to wrap this all up, the video concludes with one final, quite urgent demand, doesn't it?
It does. They tell the world explicitly to start calling them the ADF.
ADF being the Allied Democratic Forces, the Ugandan group that originally pledged allegiance back in 2019?
Correct. They're demanding recognition of their full transformation into this multinational jihadist group, ISCAP, the Islamic State Central Africa Province.
And that is a crucial distinction, isn't it? Failing to recognize that the ADF is now, effectively, ISCAP is a strategic mistake. It minimizes the scale and the regional ambition of the threat.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of who they are now. This video really underscores ISCAP's extensive capabilities: recruitment, fighting, propaganda. And those threats against Uganda especially need to be taken very seriously.
The urgency really can't be overstated here. ISCAP remains one of the biggest jihadist threats on the African continent.
I agree. And the sheer sophistication and breadth of this video clearly demonstrate how important Central, Southern, and East Africa have become to the global Islamic State network.
So what does this all mean for those trying to counter this threat? The source material suggests that regional powers it mentions, Tanzania and South Africa specifically, need to lead counter-radicalization efforts.
Yes, but perhaps focusing on things like better anti-corruption enforcement and closer collaboration with the private intelligence sector.
Okay, that holistic approach seems essential, because the threat isn't purely military, is it? It's deeply ideological and narrative-based. But why the focus on anti-corruption? How does stopping corruption actually counter radicalization?
Well, the idea is, if the government is widely seen as corrupt, predatory, or just ineffective,
which happens,
then ISCAP can very easily step into that vacuum and present itself as the more morally legitimate, maybe cleaner, fairer authority.
Oh, okay. So by reducing corruption, the state proves it can actually serve its people, which robs ISCAP of one of its primary recruitment narratives.
That's the core vulnerability they exploit, you could say. If you can fix the governance gap, you remove the political space ISCAP needs to thrive.
That makes sense. So we've covered the deep historical justification, the laser focus on Uganda, the operational proof of capability across their walaya, and the really multi-layered recruitment tactics presented in this Jihad and Dawah video.
Exactly. And maybe let's leave you, the listener, with this final thought to consider. Thinking back to the depth of narrative awareness displayed in this propaganda, how does their strategic decision to compare the conflict to Moses versus the Pharaoh, remember, a narrative focused on freeing the enslaved, how does that work to both project overwhelming power, and inspire potential recruits who might feel oppressed regardless of their specific geographical location.
That's a really interesting point.
It suggests ISCAP is deeply invested in these universal narratives, stories that resonate far beyond the jungles of the DRC, and are designed, ultimately, to mobilize resistance against almost any established regime they deem illegitimate.